VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And welcome to Crosstalk here on the VCY America Network. Jim Schneider with you today. And folks, the fallout from the Supreme Court decision here at the end of June continues. And last week, the notice was given that, we even learned about it before the 4th of July recess, that the Congress was going to come back into session and take a vote on repealing what is known as Obamacare, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. And we saw such a vote take place last week. Things are pending in the Senate at this time, and no indication that the Senate Majority Leader has any desire to see things advance. But what does all of this mean for us now? Where do we stand as a nation? And what does this mean to the medical community as well? Today we're going to receive a physician's review of Obamacare and the impact that this is going to have, not only upon their profession, but upon the healthcare industry as a whole across the nation. It's our privilege to have with us today Dr. Kipp Van Camp. He's a triple board-certified physician. He's an interventional radiologist and former family practitioner. His formal education includes medical training with 2 residencies and a fellowship covering a span of 9 years of postgraduate education. He's also a medical business owner and serves as an adjunct professor at Washburn University and the University of Kansas. He engages in clinical and scientific medical research, a public speaker, and an author, his latest book being Misdiagnosis, a practicing physician's case study in healthcare reform. And Dr. Van Camp, thank you for joining us today here on Crosstalk.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me on your show.
Let me ask you this. When you heard that Supreme Court decision, Dr. Van Camp, were you taken by surprise over this 5-4 decision?
You know, I like you said, I do some blogging, and I had I'm probably one of the few guys, and you'll probably think I'm just making this up, but at least I have the validity of my blog on my website on Dr. Kipp. That's drkipp.com. There's 2 P's in Kipp. Anyway, on my website on 12/26/2011, I said, here are the 4 questions going before the Supreme Court, and of those 4 questions, the number one issue is the mandate constitutional or unconstitutional. And then I had also taken an earlier blog, I guess it may have been a week or 2 before, where I had said, here's the Supreme Court. These are our 9 justices. 4 of them were appointed by Democrats. 5 of them were appointed by Republican presidents. And if you look at the makeup of the court and how they vote, their voting record, the 4 liberal vote or the democratically appointed judges have toe the party line almost every time. They have a 90+% voting record of towing the party line, whereas the 5 conservatives, 2 of the 5 toe the party line 90%, just like the liberal side, and then one of the 5 toes the party line 70% of the time, but 30% of the time he flip-flops. And then the last 2 are Kennedy and Roberts, and they towed the party line 50-50. So I said all that the Obama crowd needs to do is get 1 justice to flip-flop. And if they can get 1 conservative to flip over, then this thing will win. This thing will become determined constitutional. And so I looked at the 4 questions before sorry for this long answer, but I looked for the 4 questions before the Supreme Court, and one of the questions was the Anti-Injunction Act, which is an act passed years ago that gives Congress the power, the unilateral power to pass a tax onto the American people without American people agreeing with it. So they have the authority to tax us if we disagree or not. And then we can turn around and voice our disagreement after the tax has been implemented and collected. But we have no jurisdiction in preventing Congress from doing this, from passing this tax. And so I said, all right, if that's a possibility, that is about the only possibility out there that gives the justices some wiggle room. And I actually on December 26th, so back to where I started this answer, on December 26th, I blogged and said, if you look at the Anti-Injunction Act, Congress does have that authority. They do have that unilateral power. And if the justices want to find the only loophole I can see, it's this. And sure enough, Justice Roberts picks it as a tax against everybody.
But in essence, did he not rewrite this legislation? I mean, it was argued, early on, this is not a tax. This is under the Commerce Clause. This was clearly the intent of the Congress at that time. Didn't we see Justice Roberts actually become an activist from the bench by rewriting the legislation?
That's the funny thing, and that's why I love talking about the court for the little bit, as a layperson and a guy out there practicing medicine and watching the court and their decisions. I enjoy talking about the court because it's fascinating what they do. And Justice Roberts, when he was confirmed by the Senate, he gave his speech to America, and he said very unequivocally, he said, I do not want to be seen as a Supreme Court Chief Justice, the Chief Justice, as, usually the justices, the Chief Justices, it becomes their court. Their influence is left on the court, and that's gone on for years. Well, anyway, so Justice becomes the new chief, and he says, I want America and I want my legacy with the court to be seen as a constitutional court. We want to follow the Constitution to the letter of the law. And then he used the example, he said, if you go to a baseball game and you go there for the purpose of watching the baseball players and to watch the batted balls and the pitches and the hits and all the game, you don't go to watch the umpire. But the umpire is the one who's the constitutional authority there. And he says, so that's what I want to be known as. I want to be known as the umpire of the court who's following the Constitution to the T, and I don't want anything to do with politics. Let the politicians be the baseball players.
Wow.
And then in one fell swoop, he thrust himself in the political arena after 7 years of being a constitutional judge, which is so ironic. I mean, what an irony there.
Well, we're going to get into some of the areas that perhaps are closer to your profession, and if we could just kind of rewind the tape here just a bit as far as the proceedings going on before they got to the Supreme Court, and as things were being developed in Congress. This was part of the presidential debate even in 4 years ago. Let me ask this, as a medical doctor, do you believe that reform in our healthcare system was necessary, that we needed to address, is necessary for us? What's your thoughts here?
That's a very, very important question, and I've spoken about this many times. It's a very difficult topic because American healthcare system is still the very best in the world. And if your listeners get a chance to check out my book of Misdiagnosis, in Chapter 8 I describe why America is actually the best healthcare system in the world and possibly in the history of the world. And yet we get beat up by that all the time. The media enjoys beating us up and says we're 42nd in life expectancy out of the 190-plus United Nations countries, and we're 37th in infant mortality. But when you compare those, they're not even legitimate comparisons. And even the man who made those first claims back in the 2000 has retracted those statistics and said we're not being fair. But that doesn't ever get reported. And so we are not 42nd in life expectancy when you compare apples to apples, and we're not 37th in infant mortality. And I explain that and expound on that in the book. So we do have the best. So you have to you got to have somewhere to start. And if your listeners can agree we have the best healthcare system in the world and can get past those distorted statistics, then we have a place to start. But once you assume, yes, we really do, if you can accept that we have the best in the world from what you've seen in the world, from what you've seen in your own life and your own experiences, from the technological advances, from the people who are being cured from cancer and all these things, then you can say, okay, even with the best healthcare system in the world, we can still come up with ways to improve the system. And one of the things that's lacking is the portability part. Another thing that's lacking is some pre-existing conditions are difficult to continue to get covered over a long period of time. Another thing that's difficult is the uninsured. How many uninsured do we really have in this country? And is there a way to provide them at least some level of insurance? Okay, so we have the best in the world, but we do have some problems. Now, what Obamacare does that's so disturbing to many physicians and should be disturbing to all of America is that it throws out the entire system and starts over, basically. It says, let's restructure the entire system. It's just the adage, throw out the baby with the bathwater. That's exactly what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than tweaking and improving upon what we have that's already great. And then I've also said just another brief answer for that question. I've heard it said we have a healthcare crisis, but really, if you want to break it into two areas, either health delivery, which is the practice of medicine and the treatment you receive, or health insurance, which is how we pay for everything. And so I've heard it said we do not have a health delivery crisis, but we have a health insurance crisis, and I think that is a more accurate statement of what we have. Unfortunately, Obamacare doesn't separate those two areas apart. He lumps them all together and tries to solve everything in one fell swoop, and it's virtually impossible to do. For example, they want to expand if you look at anyone's statistics, we have 34 to 50 million Americans who are uninsured. When you study those uninsured, there's a whole host of reasons why they're uninsured. It isn't simply because they can't afford it. The media will make you think, oh, that means there's 34 million Americans living in poverty. That is not the case. It's approximately 10 million Americans who are on Medicaid, another 10 million who can't afford it. So now you're down to 20 million versus 34 to 50. Big difference. The solution in Obamacare is to take those extra 10 million people, the 10 million who are already on Medicaid, and expand the roles of Medicaid. So now those 20 million people are on Medicaid. Can you fathom, do you know anybody, have you ever heard any patient or any doctor say, I love Medicaid, don't touch my Medicaid?
No, not at all.
Never. Who would? It's not the best system, and it's not the best system out there. My own brother-in-law was in town this weekend, and he had to have a knee replacement, and he struggled, and he had lost his job because he couldn't work because of his knee, and he spent about a 9-month period trying to find a way to get this knee replaced, and he finally had to resort to going on Medicaid, and he said it was the most disastrous thing he's had to do. And even when he was done, now you're not supposed to be able to bill Medicaid, doctors have to accept whatever Medicaid pays. So if I charge $100 for an office visit or for a consult, I should say for a consult, because no one charges that for an office visit, but for a consult, an hour-long consult, and Medicaid says I'm going to pay you $10, I have to accept that. I cannot charge the patient. Well, because of some loopholes in the Medicaid system, my brother-in-law was telling me not only did he have to struggle to find a doctor who would actually do his surgery because doctors have opted out of Medicaid, and not only did he have a mountain of paperwork, and not only did it take about 3 extra months to finally get the knee replacement scheduled, he now still owes $13,000 on top of it after all of this.
Wow.
And I don't know how he's supposed to deal with that. That is not a solution. Now, that's under our current system, so we have some problems. But the solution for Obama is to expand Medicaid, and I've just explained to you that Medicaid's bad. Mm-hmm. That is not a solution. And that should bother Americans.
Yeah, and this is something that is going to, as we expand Medicaid, we're only going to find the situation growing worse, it seems, in this expanded system that's been created through this law.
Sure. That's just one piece of the puzzle, the problems. Another problem, and I don't know when you're...
We're just 5 seconds away, and I know we need to deal with
take a break then, so
some of the pre-existing conditions and portability issues. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Crosstalk here on the VCY American Network. Dr. Kipp Van Camp is our guest here today, giving a physician's review of Obamacare. And certainly we're going to take a look as to what's in store for the healthcare system that America provides. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, how old is the oldest person alive today?
Chris, it's very seldom today that a person lives much over 100. These elderly years are full of pain and suffering, and eventually death gets us all. It's interesting that in our present world, an age of over 100 is a very old age. But in creation, people were expected to live forever, and Adam would have done so had he not rebelled and incurred the wages of sin, which is death. There's only one solution to the death problem. Death is not just a physical problem. It's a moral penalty for sin. The solution is that the Creator himself came to pay this penalty, and through his death on the cross, we can have eternal life. Chris, the whole gospel message started back in Genesis, but it applies to us today.
Thanks, Dr. John. If you'd like to go back to Genesis, visit us on the web at www.icr.org. That's www.icr.org.
You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network as we're speaking today with Dr. Kipp Van Camp, a triple board-certified physician. He is the author of the book Misdiagnosis, a practicing physician's case study in healthcare reform. We're taking a look at the impact of the 5-4 Supreme Court decision, and also we did see that the House did vote to repeal Obamacare last week, 244 to 185 in a roll call vote. We'll look ahead politically at where this is as well, but certainly we're talking about some of the areas that, reform perhaps needed, but to do a complete overhaul of our system is going to and is presenting a number of problems. Dr. Van Camp, we talked about some of the issues of those who do not have insurance and the expansion of Medicare, but what about this matter of pre-existing conditions that allowed people to be denied health insurance? Is this problem now all solved with this new Affordable Health Care Act?
No, it's not solved. Unfortunately, there's no great simple answers to these questions. Several years ago, the insurance industry and Congress and our politicians made it inappropriate or unacceptable for insurance companies to deny people for pre-existing conditions. And so it's kind of a misleading stance that everybody gets denied for pre-existing conditions. When you really look at one case at a time, it's a very unusual circumstance where someone is denied that is legitimate. And what I mean by that is I'm not saying people aren't denied all the time, but there's always something else in the background. For example, someone has a job, they develop, just to make the case, I'll go absurd and I'll say they develop HIV. So it's a serious thing. They develop HIV. They either quit their job for medical reasons or they decide, I can't, or the employer says, I'm going to let you go. So they lose their job for whatever reason. Some companies will provide them with maybe 3 months of health insurance. Some companies will not provide them with any health insurance coverage. However, they do have the option to buy a COBRA policy. Now, is it expensive? Yes, it is. It's absolutely expensive. After 18 months, that COBRA policy then runs out. By then, the person is either expected to go on the system or to have found another job that has insurance or go out and buy their own insurance. And so if you kept insurance through that whole process, the insurance industry cannot deny you coverage. The problem is they can charge you more money. That's the problem. And so it's costly. Now, because it's costly, you can't. The problem is we take this argument because it's politically beneficial to say people are being denied their health insurance. I mean, do you remember when President Obama was arguing? He said the reason I wanted to reform health care was because his own mother developed ovarian cancer and was denied her cancer treatments because of a pre-existing condition. Remember that?
Yeah.
Well, when the truth was found, that's a lie or it's a distortion. A lady from, this was printed in the Topeka Capital Journal. It didn't get a lot of legs with the media, but I put it in my own book because I checked it out, and sure enough, it's true. His own mother did get coverage and treatment. She was not denied. She just had a cancer. She couldn't survive, and unfortunately for her, but she wasn't denied, and it wasn't because of pre-existing conditions. But he took that as his reason for overhauling the entire system and making this his benchmark legislation. Well, it was a distortion. Now, do we have problems because it's expensive for people with pre-existing conditions? Yes, it is. No question about that. I'm not arguing that. And I think there's some easy solutions, or at least some reasonable solutions for that. Some of the solutions are when a person has pre-existing conditions, let's take something a little less of a pre-existing condition. Let's say someone has hypertension, and they didn't keep their COBRA policy, and they can't get insurance because their blood pressure is too high, but they need the medication and they need a doctor to keep their blood pressure down under control and to get it treated appropriately. And so instead of saying to that person, you can't have health insurance because you're denied because you have this pre-existing condition. The better solution would be here is a basic level of health care that you can qualify for, or here's a basic level of health care that you can go out and purchase because now it's more affordable because we're only giving you a portion of the overall health treatment and care that you need. So a plan that is a smaller version of an all-encompassing, cover-everything plan. But insurance has been unable to do that because Congress stepped in and regulated insurance companies and said, we are unable to, they said you will have to provide these services to all of your people on your insurance plan. And so there isn't a cafeteria out there where you can go walk into the cafeteria and say, okay, I need this coverage for joint disease and knee replacement, and I need this coverage for vaccination, but I'm a male, so I don't need maternity care, and I'm unmarried, and so I don't need maternity care, or I'm married and I have a wife, so I need maternity care, or I'm 67 years old and I don't need the pediatric vaccinations and pediatric care. There isn't any plan like that because the Congress says if you're going to provide this plan for your clients, you have to provide all of these services.
And that really begs my next question then, because even presently, it's not uncommon to see double-digit increases in health insurance premiums every year. Are these types of increase then going to worsen in the years to come under the Affordable Care Act?
Well, they actually are, and people think they're not. People have their head in the sand if they think all of a sudden the cost is going to come down. Let me give you a really simple example on that. It's very simple and straightforward. Imagine someone wants a cosmetic procedure. And let's just take, because it's something people are easily understand, there are hordes of cosmetic procedures out there, and I could come up with many, but I'll just pick one that people know about. I'll say breast augmentation. Okay, in the last 15 years in America, when healthcare costs have continued to go up exponentially in all other areas, breast surgery costs has come down. Breast augmentation, when it's an elective cosmetic procedure, has come down. Why did the cost come down? Because the free market works. Because if you have one plastic surgeon on one side of the street and another plastic surgeon on the other side of the street, and one of them charges exorbitant prices, he will not stay in business unless his skill is so superior or he has an unusual clientele. Mm-hmm. He will not stay in business. And that's why the cost comes down. When the free market is allowed to work, it works. It works in all other aspects of our life. And there was a day back in 1965 when the government said 1965, they said we're going to get in the middle of health care, and they started regulating everything, and that was known as Medicare. That's where it started. And once they got started, they started grabbing more and more of the health industry. And over time, they've gotten into the industry so far that it's so regulated, we don't even know what we're doing half the time because we know what we're doing from a medical standpoint, but we don't know what we're doing from the bureaucracy standpoint because it's so exhaustive to deal with the paperwork, and the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing from an administrative standpoint. And so people have bills that they don't know, or did they get paid? Did they not get paid? Were they charged correctly? Did the private insurance get charged more than the Medicare patient? For another example, if you have three people who, same age, same gender, all three patients lying in the intensive care unit, and so one bed right beside each other, three different patients, same age, same gender, same disease. They've all had a stroke, let's say. If one of them has Medicaid and another has Medicare and another has private insurance, all three of them will have a different bill. Now, the transparency has to be put back into the system. We have to have transparency. All prices should be the same. Your ICU bed should be the same, whether you're on Medicaid, Medicare, or private pay, or self-pay. It should be the same, and it's not. And that's because the insurance companies, that's where there's been abuse on all parts. We can't say anybody's not contributed to the problems, but we do have. Insurance companies have abused that by saying, well, okay, we have these payers, they're going to pay, so we're going to charge more to make up for all these over here who couldn't pay, or that we had to eat, or that we got stiffed on. We're going to charge more for the payers.
President Obama has said if you like your physician and you like your current health plan, nothing changes. You can keep your doctor, keep your current insurance. Is that truth or is that fiction?
Well, one of the things that Obama's plan wants to do is to make all doctors participate in the government plan. Currently, if a doctor says, I don't make much money on Medicare, so I am not going to accept Medicare payments, fee for service. I'm not going to accept their payment plan, so I'm going to opt out of Medicare. I can opt out. Under the single-payer plan that Obama wants, which is the national health care plan, all physicians are required that they have to be a participating physician. Now, the problem, so there are some clauses in the bill that try to make doctors stay in medicine and accept Obamacare. The problem with that is doctors 50 years and older that may have put a little bit of money away or maybe can feel they can afford to change professions will actually the profession. Did you see the survey of 83% of physicians surveyed out of 660 physicians last week said that they, approximately that many physicians said that they would have considered leaving medicine because of the Obama plan?
Yeah, there have been really some startling predictions as to doctor shortages coming up, and some have asked...
Well, and that's where I'm headed with that.
Yeah,
exactly, 45,000 shortage of primary care physicians. Now, so if you're going to keep your same doctor, you're not going to get the same level of care because he's going to be so overworked because you're going to have 30 million people dumped into the system with a shortage already of 45,000 physicians, up to 150,000 physicians, and we're supposed to manage that. Well, so what do you think happens? You already think you don't get enough time with your doctor. Wait till we get 2 minutes with them because they have to see 60 patients in a day instead of 40.
Yeah, go on a conveyor belt and just keep rolling along here.
Everybody stick out your tongue, and we'll do it as a group.
So, as a physician, do you believe that this is going to, we're going to see our health care rationed in this nation?
Yes, I do. Obama said it himself. We just read what they say. If the media will give us the information, it's right there in front of us. Sometimes you have to read between the lines. This one you don't. He said, look, if grandma has a heart condition and she needs a pacemaker, but we can deal with her condition nearly as well with a pill or a medication, we will give her the medication because she's a grandma. She's in her whatever. She's old enough. She's lived a good, long life. We will not waste the money on the pacemaker. We'll put the money into the medication.
Wow, that's
ration care.
That sounds pretty close to these death panels we were warned about.
What are you going to do with the handicapped in our country? What are you going to do with our Down syndrome and our handicapped patients? Are we getting to where we say they don't deserve the care because they had born with a handicap? The less of our brethren? What are we going to do with them? Mm-hmm. You start rationing care, it becomes a very slippery slope that I don't think Americans want to go down.
Are death panels part of this?
Yes. The Independent Physician Advisory Committee is not referred to as a death panel, of course, but in its strictest sense of how it functions, it is a death panel. If grandma needs a knee replacement, it will, and she comes to the doctor. Normally, the way it works now, the doctor and grandma will have that discussion, and they'll decide if she's healthy enough, if she's a good candidate for a knee replacement. And if the family's in support of this and grandma can do this and she has some type of way to pay for this, whether it's insurance or however she's paying for this, she's on Medicare, she will get the knee replacement. She may have to get an approval through the Medicare process, but in most cases they will approve it. In fact, if they don't, doctors appeal it, and I don't know of hardly any cases that after they're appealed they get denied. I'm sure there are some. Under this condition, under this Obama plan, any decision like that will go before the Independent Payment Advisory Committee.
And they will make determination.
That's exactly right.
We're going to take a quick break. And, folks, if you want to start getting on board with your questions here today or comments, our number 800-733-9829. 800-733-9829. We're taking a physician's review of Obamacare with Dr. Kipp Van Camp. We'll be right back.
The Bible tells us that no man knows the day or the hour of Christ's return, but we are told to be ready, to look for that blessed hope, and to occupy until he comes. The Bible characterizes what the last times would be like, and observing world conditions today, we know the Lord could return at any time. When Jesus' disciples asked, "What will be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world?" Jesus carefully explained what the world would be like. In the book, 40 Irrefutable Signs of the Last Generation, author Noah Hutchings takes a thought-provoking look at these signs of the last generation and the importance of being ready for the Lord's return. This book is the size of a workbook and features over 200 pages presenting 40 irrefutable signs of the last generation. One copy of this book is available for a donation of $20, and 2 copies are available for a donation of $35. To make your donation to VCY America, call 1-800-729-9829. That's 1-800-729-9829.
He's the author of Misdiagnosis, a practicing physician's case study in healthcare reform. The name, Dr. Kipp Van Camp, a triple board-certified physician that we're talking with today here on Crosstalk. Doctor, you mentioned a blog. Give us again that blog address where our listeners can obtain more information about you, your thoughts on issues, and also, of course, a copy of your book there called Misdiagnosis.
Yeah, I hope your listeners will take a look at my book. I think they'll really. I would tell them they can't afford not to have it. It's a $15 special going on, or $14.97. You can get it at drkipp, drkipp.com. I can promise you will pay less for this book than you'll pay in the taxes that will be rendered to pay for Obamacare. And I think this book will give you some very good understanding of what's coming at you real soon. That same website has my blog on there, and anything else that I do, that's my website. So
drkipp.com, and Kipp is with 2 P's, drkipp.com. Let me just ask you this here, and I see we've got several calls lined up. What impact is this going to have on physicians themselves, as you as a physician? I mean, some have stated, well, doctors, you're in the upper socioeconomic class. You're part of the problem why we're overpaying. Since we're overpaying our physicians, you're contributing to this spiraling healthcare cost. What's your response to that?
Well, I love that question because it's a very fair question, and if it's any other profession, I'm going to ask the same question. So I think people should ask that. I love that question. It's very easy to support and defend, and I will try to keep this brief because I know you don't need just going on and on about that. But Medicare dollars, how much of the dollars spent, percentage-wise, do you think goes to pay for physician salaries?
Of Medicare?
Yeah, Medicare, let's say Medicare costs $500 billion. Of that $500 billion, what percentage goes to pay for salaries for physicians?
Oh, let me just throw out 25%.
10%. It's less than 10%.
Wow.
We are not the problem. Do doctors make good money? Yes. On MSNBC today, I saw that there is an article written in Forbes that says the top 5 paid professions in the country are all surgeons. One's an orthodontist, another's an oral surgeon, and then 3 other surgeons, general surgery, OBGYN, and another surgeon. I don't remember whether it's orthopedics, I think, but another surgeon. Anyway, 5 top paid people in America, not even CEOs, and it's 230-some thousand. Everything's over 200,000. Remember, 250 is rich in this country, according to Obama. So these are people who make over $200,000. But what they don't include, they do not include number of hours of work. Did you know that the average doctor works between 60 and 70 hours a week? Now, when you take 60, 70 hours per week, there was a study just done by New England Journal of Medicine a year ago. I don't want to say New England Journal of Medicine because I'm not sure that I have the correct journal, but it's one of the top journals. It may be Annals of Internal Medicine. It's one of those internal medicine journals, one of the reputable journals. They did a study showing that doctors' salaries, there are only 3 professions when you take into consideration the number of hours worked. There are only 3 specialties that make over $100 an hour. Primary care makes between $35 and $40 an hour. Now, is that unreasonable in this country? If you have a plumber come to your house, are you going to spend $100? If they spend an hour's worth of work, I bet you do. Mm-hmm. Is the mechanic going to charge that for your car? And who makes more important decisions? And I'm not trying to badmouth any other profession. I'm not, because I respect all their professions, and I think we all should get paid whatever we deserve to be paid for the work we render. But if you're having surgery, do you care that your doctor makes $100 an hour or $200,000 a year or $250,000 a year? Do you care? No, you want the best doctor you can have taking care of you. And yet they excluded from all of these statistics, they excluded the major league athletes, the professional athletes. They excluded the Hollywood types. They excluded the mega wealthy. and they want to put the doctors in the same category as the mega wealthy. Our salary is not the problem in this for why our healthcare costs have gone up. And then they say, well, doctor, you're just trying to protect your profession. I love my profession, but most doctors I know got into medicine to take care of people. And when you put both our hands behind our backs and tie them, we don't, like they've done with Obamacare, we don't do a very good job taking care of patients.
Let me get one more question in here before we go to the phone lines. And we saw last week where the House voted to overturn Obamacare. No indication that the Senate is going to take up the measure. Harry Reid is not really wanting such a vote to take place there. But let me ask you this. If the health care law is not overturned, what do you believe in your heart of hearts our health care system is going to look like in the not-too-distant future?
Well, have you ever taken a good long look at the current systems around the world that are socialized? Finland, Sweden, Canada, the Cuba system, and there's a pretty good example of what we will look like. There is a reason that people from other countries come to America when they need heroic care. It's because they know they're going to get, this is still the Mecca, the world Mecca for medical care, so people come to our country. Another thing that will not happen, we will look more like those socialistic countries. And Obama's never pretended. He's always said he has a European, he's very interested in promoting a European style of governing in America. That's been his goal all along. Socialism is not far from his, he has that philosophy, it seems, on most of his decisions, and he's been pretty candid about saying that when he's pressed on the matter. So that's what we'll look like. Another thing we will look like, we won't have the research and development that we have in this country. Right now, private sector pays. They did another study. This is a National Institute of Health. They took something like of equal dollars spent via the National Institute of Health versus equal dollars spent on our private sector research and development. Both research departments, one at NIH and one in the private sector, same amount of money spent. One came up with 91 advances, breakthroughs in medicine, and the other came up with 7. You can figure out which one it was. It was the NIH who only came up with 7. When you take private sector out, it stagnates at least the speed at which advances occur.
Well, Doctor, our phone lines are packed here, and let's get to the lines here. Fort Scott, Kansas.
Give it to me.
Tom, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yes, it's my understanding that the main people are going to have care 16 years to 45. Is that correct?
Well, some people have translated that. I think that's a great question. And some people have looked at the tea leaves inside the Obama plan and said, yes, that's really what this is doing. Because most of those people are the ones who are uninsured. There are a significant number of people in that age category who have chosen to not carry health insurance.
Yes.
So, and there's a lot of reasons they've chosen that. Some feel they're invincible, they don't need it. Some feel that if they're going to spend money, it's better spent over here. Some have chosen to opt out and pay cash. So there's a lot of reasons. Some have trusted their employer is going to take care of it, and then for whatever reason their employer chose not to continue. That's something we haven't even talked about. Wait till the employer costs. I was talking to a man who has a $50 million company, 700 employees, just the other day. And I was talking to him on the phone, and he said, here's the problem. My accountant tells me it's going to cost me over $2 million to continue to provide health insurance for my employees under the new plan, under the new taxes, the new laws, the new penalties that are coming because he has over 50 employees. And he said, I asked my accountant, why don't I just opt out of the system and then pay my employees $3,000 an employee, and they go buy their own health insurance, and at least I'll feel good about doing something for them. And the accountant says you can't do that because in the letter of the law it says that's illegal. And if you do that, the only thing you can do is they will fine you. You can opt out, and they'll fine you, but you can't then translate it back to the employee.
Yeah.
And he says that's the wrong thing to do. So what do I do? That's where we're at in this country. We're going to stifle growth. We're going to stifle. Employers aren't going to want to carry health insurance. And then what will happen is we will all be forced to go on the government system, which is the ultimate goal, have a single-payer system.
Thank you, Tom.
Good.
Appreciate your call. Let's go next to Angie calling from Pittsburgh, Kansas, down the road there. Go ahead. You're on the air, Angie.
Hi. I was wondering what you thought about this. My husband is around 45 and disabled, but he's also has his RN for over 16 years, so he's familiar with medicine. He is on Medicare, and he had he had 2 different scripts, and his doctor said he needed them, no big deal. One, for a while, he was able to get them through his Medicare, no problem. And then they decided that the people upstairs decided, no, he doesn't need this, even though his doctor said he did. We were able to pay cash for this at pharmacy, and here in the past month or so, since Obamacare started really getting swept up and starting enforcing, we've been told that if Medicare says no, we cannot pay cash, even for, can't pay a penny to get a script. If Medicare has already turned it down, we can't go anywhere and get the script. Even if it's on the $4 list, we can't go get it. And if the pharmacy does sell it to us, it's a $50,000 fine on the pharmacy.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think these stories are exactly what you're going to start hearing as we head down the road and Obamacare begins to be implemented. It's already been implemented a little bit, but not to the degree that this caller is talking about. And Angie's exactly right. These are where we're headed. This is the good news is the general public is going to, the citizens of America are going to pay for this. They're going to be the ones suffering. They're going to be the ones dealing with these problems as they come up. And I encourage all these folks to speak up, tell their congressmen so we get it repealed before it goes into full effect, because this is what we're going to be up against.
Angie, thank you for the call. So you're saying the best recourse at this time, Doctor, is that interaction with U.S. congressmen and U.S. senators? Repeal
this thing, and I don't know any other way but to talk to them and try to get them convinced of that. I think they should see that, but here's the problem. I'm pretty cynical now. I was like Americans. I said, okay, this thing will be determined unconstitutional because the states looked around and said, 26 of them plus said, we're not going to accept this. We're not going to accept this mandate. It's a bad law. And so they send it to the court system. And then I said, okay, the Supreme Court's going to knock this thing down. That's going to be the end of it. And then, of course, I did give my cynical side and gave you a reason why they might not. And then, sure enough, they flip-flopped and said, no, it's still constitutional. Now we're starting to get the details of the bill again. We lost sight of that for a while. And I'm cynical. Why do we think Congress is going to, even though the House has repealed it, they repealed it the first time around, but the Senate, and so then Obama signed it into law. Yeah. The first time around it got appealed. Now it's been appealed again, so it's actually been appealed twice. Americans don't want it, but they keep forcing it down our throats. So I don't trust them to do what's the right thing. That's the problem.
Let's go to Pensacola, Florida. Benjamin, you're on the air. Hello, Benjamin. Benjamin.
Sounds like we've got a pet there.
Yeah, okay. We're going then to Harry in Port Huron, Michigan. Go ahead, Harry.
Hey, guys. Thank you, Jim, for this very important show. I've got a question for you, Doc, and this is why don't we just get rid of the whole thing and just have a subsidized private insurance? You know, you'd have a policy and have the premium, very, very affordable premium, 5 to 6% of somebody's monthly income, whatever their monthly income is, and have it subsidized, and get rid of Medicare and Medicaid and just have a subsidized premium.
You know, some people have proposed that. Some people have said basically Medicare in some ways does that, and why not put everybody on a Medicare-type system and get rid of everything else? And, you know, the problem, I think there's might be some wisdom in that. At least there would be transparency. It would be a one-size-fits-all, and no one would be denied. And so there is some wisdom in that. The problem is the bureaucracy that would implement that can never stay out of it. They never will stay out of it. No matter what we do, they always jump back in and decide they know better than we do and want to regulate us and tell us how to practice medicine or deny this or tell us this would be a better approach. That's what we hear all the time. We don't get to just practice medicine. But I think that if you want to say something positive that's happened with Obamacare, we are now having these discussions. So that is the silver lining to all of this.
Harry, thanks for the call. We're going to take a break and come back to the final segment. Our number, 800-733-9829. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewweekend.com. Today is number 18 in our list of 20 characteristics of false teachers embraced by the false church. Number 18, false teachers, I believe, are part of God's judgment on a people and a nation. I think we can see that in 1 Kings chapter 22, 21 through 23, where we read, Then a spirit, which many believe, by the way, this spirit was Satan himself, then a spirit came forward and stood before the Lord and said, I will persuade him. This is speaking of King Ahab and his 400 false prophets. The Lord said to him, "In what way?" So he, this spirit, or what I believe was Satan, said, "I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets." And the Lord said, "You shall persuade him, and you shall also prevail. Go out and do so. Therefore, look, the Lord has put a lying spirit in all of these prophets of yours, and the Lord hath declared disaster against you." We see 400 false prophets demonically controlled as what? Part of God's judgment on that nation.
A physician's review of Obamacare today on Crosstalk with Dr. Kipp Van Camp. And taking your calls here today on Crosstalk, we're going right back to the phone lines. Cambridge, Wisconsin. Terry, thank you for holding. You're on the air.
Yes, I am a disabled vet, and I go to the VA for my medical health needs. But I have one unique question. What is this going to do with us vets? And how does it deal with us vets? And I'll listen in.
Okay, thank you, Terry.
You know, I think that's an excellent question because I do not, in all of my studies of Obamacare, I don't see any segment that excludes, there was a time, in one of the chapters I talk about the people who are excluded from this bill. One of them is Congress. Muslims are excluded. The Christian Scientists are excluded. There's a list. Then there's a whole bunch of unions who are excluded, but I don't see the veterans excluded anywhere. And there are veterans who tell me they like the care they get at the VA. I've also heard a lot of veterans, and I've worked in the VA some, and I have had some frustration with the VA system. So I don't think the VA system is really the solution, but there are vets who are being well served in certain VAs around the country. And those veterans don't want to lose what they have. I can't tell you that they're going to or not, and that's a question I'll have to do some research to find that out. But I have never seen them excluded from the Obamacare plan in where they would then continue the current system they have. So I'm afraid, if I read between the lines with that, I'm afraid they may be dumped right into the same pool that the rest of us are in, I guess.
To Mobile, Alabama. Pat, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a question. When I was in second grade, they gave us a sugar cube that had the polio virus in it, and it gave me polio, and it's in my whole spine. It hit the whole 9 yards. And I would like to know why Obama, the government that forced us to take those things, that he can't help pay some of my medical bills, because I can't. I have COPD, my throat closes up, I'm supposed to be in a wheelchair, and all kind of things. It hit my whole body. So,
now, your name's Pat? Is that what I?
Yes.
Pat, I appreciate that. I've met a few patients like yourself who went through a similar type experience where they were required or it was strongly recommended that they take this polio vaccination, and they ended up getting polio from the vaccination, or they were predisposed that once the polio virus hit them, they developed polio. So I totally am. I'm completely empathetic to what you're going through, and I think your story is an exceptional example of what we should all be a little bit fearful of when the government gets to step in and practice medicine. Bureaucrats who have no background in medicine get to practice medicine, and they get to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And there's one of the proponents of the Obama plan says we have to shift our thinking from treating individuals and what's best for the individual patient to what's best for the community. And if we literally do shift our thinking to what's best for the community, then those stories like Pat just gave will be reality. Now, how do you pay for all that? That's a huge problem in America. We love technology. We want the latest, greatest treatments. We want medical care that's new and improved. It's going to give us the best quality of life, and everything like that comes with a price tag. And unfortunately, someone has to pay for it.
Thank you, Pat. To West Dallas, Wisconsin. Brad, you're on the air.
Hi. Governor Walker has stated that he's not going to go along with this stuff, and the court's already said that the states don't have to as far as setting up these exchanges. But I think the states should go further than that to oppose this Obamacare, because for even in violation of federal law, for two reasons. One, if we do this, America's over. Two, Obama has already set the template on not obeying the law. Look what he's done. No border protection, no cooperation with states regarding illegal aliens, no prosecution of the new Black Panthers in Pennsylvania in the 2008 elections when they intimidated voters. He's already not obeying the law left and right. You said that this was signed into law. I laughed. I said, signed into what? This guy doesn't respect the law.
Yeah, I think this is another good point. I mean, your callers are very well informed, and I think that they're making some great points. The states have given us a blueprint, or certainly other states, of how to deal with this Obama plan. But they thought they had come up with a blueprint on how to deal with it when they filed lawsuits against the federal government, saying that the Obamacare was unconstitutional and they could not mandate purchase of health insurance on the American people. And so they had a blueprint that looked like a blueprint for success of making this thing go away, this Obamacare plan go away, and instead it backfired. It didn't work. And so I'm afraid somehow these decisions to opt out of state exchanges, if the ACA is completely implemented, I'm afraid it's going to backfire on those states. And they're going to find themselves, right now as it stands, there's a deadline for states to comply with setting up a health exchange. And if they do not comply, they will be left out of any of the federal dollars, and they'll automatically be forced to go into a national plan. So they may backfire. Time will tell, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. And I believe that is sometime after the first of the year, isn't it, Doctor?
It's supposed to be, well, it depends who you read. They're supposed to be engaging in this by 2013, and I think the deadline is 2015, if I remember it correctly. I outlined it in one of my chapters of my book. It's either 2014 or 2015.
Okay. We have just 60 seconds left here, Doctor. Tell us again about your blog and your book there as well.
Well, I want to thank you for being on the show. I get pretty impassioned about this, as you can tell, and it's only because I'm everyday Joe Blow in the trenches practicing physician, and I believe I give a perspective that very few doctors are giving to America, and very few politicians are giving to America. So I think you'll find it a refreshing read if you would look at this book of my Misdiagnosis. I think you'll find it informative and a very refreshing look at how we can improve upon our current system and what's wrong with the ACA. Anyway, you can get it at drkipp.com. That's drkipp.com. And I appreciate the chance to speak to your listeners.
Are you optimistic, Doctor?
Yeah, I am. I get cynical at times, and I did once that Supreme Court came out again, and now I'm back on the optimistic trail that it's going to work, and we're going to get rid of it, and then we're going to have a better health system because we actually have engaged in the dialogue now. It's been a painful process, but once it's done, we're actually going to come out of this with a better system than what we had.
Dr. Kipp Van Camp, thank you for being with us here today on Crosstalk.
Glad to do it.
And folks, again, the website, drkipp.com. That's Kipp with double P, KIPP.com for more information on the blog and the book there as well, as we take a physician's review today of Obamacare. So much more to be said, but you'll find more there on the site. Thanks for joining us today, and you do need to be in contact with your U.S. senators right now. A vote totally stalled on this issue. Harry Reid's not letting it go forward. Thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.